Hey guys, Ashley Severe here with Severe RPMS Adjuster Training. Today we're going to be talking about and going over how to perform a comprehensive inspection of the interior. All right, so let's get started. Upon arriving to the lost property, there are some general rules that we highly recommend that you follow prior to starting your inspection. One of those rules we want to talk about is the parking. You want to always be conscious of where you park on the lost property. You do not want to park in the driveway of the insureds. You do not want to block the driveway of the insured. You do not want to park on the landscape or grass of the insured. You definitely do not want to block any fire hydrants. If you have to park on the road, be sure to put on your hazard lights for safety. Second thing we want to talk about is the dress code. You want to always wear a shirt with a collar. Do not wear shorts. It's very unprofessional. We are insurance professionals, and therefore we must carry ourselves as such. No open-toe shoes, no denim or jeans, no political or sport affiliated branding on our clothing, no religious beliefs. The first photo that we want to take once we begin our photo documentation is going to be the lost address. Second photo you want to take is going to be the front elevation, showing the entire front of the home from corner to corner. When you begin taking your photos, documentation of all the elevations, after you've taken the overview, you want to walk up to the building and you want to begin your scan of the property from top to bottom for damages. You typically want to start at the drip edge of the roof, looking at the fascia, the soffit, then the stucco, windows, screens, and so forth as you go to each elevation. As you go to the right elevation, you start with the overview of the right elevation and then you scan from top to bottom. As you inspect the elevations, make sure you take a photo of all the appliances such as AC units and their labels as well. And continue your inspection. And you continue the same process on every elevation. You want to back up far enough so that you can take a nice overview showing corner to corner. And then you approach the structure and you scan for damages. In the process of your inspection, you also want to take photos of screens, screen enclosures, lanais, whether they're damaged or not. You want to show damage to the screens or no damage to the screens. And it's the same process all the way around. Now, this typically is the process that you would take for all of your inspections. There are exceptions. If you had a water damage claim, like a plumbing leak, you would only have to take just a couple pictures, which is the loss address, front elevation, right elevation, left elevation. You don't necessarily have to inspect all the elevations of the exterior of a home if you have a water damage claim, which is a plumbing claim. And the very first picture that you will be taking is going to be a picture of the entrance door, which will be your foyer photo. And then you're going to begin to inspect the property, and you always want to start when you're inspecting. Start from the ceiling and work your way down.
especially in the case when you're inspecting a property for wind damage. Of course, if you're inspecting a property for water damage from a plumbing, you're going to begin your inspection of the room or that area from the ground up. So you want to take proper overviews of all the areas that you're inspecting, every section of the home. And after you take the overview and confirm that there is no damage, you move to the next area. But if you find a room where there is damage, you want to take additional photos of that room. So you're going to begin with an overview first, inspect the room. If there's additional damage, you're going to take 2 or 3 more pictures, more overviews in different areas of the room, and then you're going to take close-up photos of the damaged areas. And you're going to make note of the damage that you find in that room. Always make sure that you take proper scope notes so that you can be able to remember the damages seen on the property and be able to write a proper estimate. And in addition to these scope notes, the use of it, you can also use those scope notes when you're requesting assistance from a team lead or team manager. So those scope notes will be your lifesaver or your lifeline when you're in that war room requesting assistance or help with your claim. Take an overview of the room, into the room and inspect. If there is no damage, there's no additional photos needed. But if there is damage, remember, we take additional overview photos from different angles of the room, and then we take close-up photos of the damaged areas. And we repeat this in every room. You can always take more photos during the inspection. You can always delete the photos that you don't need afterwards. So more photos is always better as opposed to having less photos. And you just repeat the process in every room. The purpose of the overview of the undamaged room is just to document that you did go inside that room and inspect it. And we're just going to continue the process. Making sure that we check every room and we open every door. So we're photo documenting with overviews areas that are damaged and areas that are not damaged. Now, when you approach a big open floor plan and you want to document the different sections of the floor plan, you want to photograph them as if they're separate rooms. Like in this case, you have the dining room that shares the space with the living room and the kitchen. So you want to photograph them as if they're separate, partitioned off rooms. So I did the dining room. Now I'm doing the living room. Try to make sure that you turn on lights so that the area is properly lit. And you inspect. I want to take this time right here just to reiterate. When you are inspecting a lost property for wind damage, you want to always begin your examination from the ceiling and work your way down. Granted, we're using the rationale that water damage is going to come from the roof, causing damage to the insulation and to the ceiling drywall, and work its way downward. But if you're inspecting a property for water damage, oftentimes water damage is going to show itself at the bottom of the floor. So you would reverse the examination process. Granted, you can examine the house, the lost property, whichever way that's the most efficient for you. However, these are just guidelines and directions to help you to be able to move quicker through the home and be attentive to any possibility of there being damage. So this is simply an advisement, and the entire goal is for us to be able to perform a comprehensive inspection of the lost property. So we're going to go on to the kitchen, overviews, and then we're going to inspect the kitchen, making sure that there's no damage. Take the time to open every door and do a proper inspection. You don't want that one door that you did not open to be a reason that you have to drive an hour, hour and a half to perform a re-inspection because you missed the damage that could have been inside that door. As you notice in this video, as I begin my inspection, I went counterclockwise around the property. This helps me to always remember that when I started inspecting, I went counterclockwise every single time. That way, if I am lost or get disoriented when I'm labeling my photos, what helps me to be able to remember where I was positioned in the home is the fact that I always went counterclockwise, which is to the right side of the home. I'll enter the home, and then I'll begin my inspection with the area where I'm at. Then I will move to the right, always to my right, okay, and work my way around the home. So these two rooms in the corner here, I did not inspect them because the insured informed me that people are in there sleeping and that there's no damage. And when you have an insured that insists that you do not inspect a certain area of the house, don't argue with the insured. Just don't inspect the property. Don't inspect that area. Then you just document that you did not have access to that area during your inspection. Okay? Now I'm going to go over a few steps of how to properly sketch the property when there is damage. And you want to always make sure that you sketch the rooms that are damaged. If the rooms are not damaged, you will not be required to draw a sketch. So first thing I like to do, I like to orient myself, put my back against the front door, and I look at how the walls are oriented. And I will draw my sketch according to how I see it. Okay, with my back up against the door, I'm going to draw the wall that is behind me, and then I continue to outline the property, just drawing the walls in the angles and the directions that they are. Don't worry about if it's to scale or if it's a perfect drawing even. Just make sure that your walls are right, what you're depicting, what you're seeing on the property. You want to pay attention to the doors and windows. And you want to be able to depict that on your drawing. Looks about right. Here's what I got so far. So let's go ahead and draw these outlines the way you see them. And we'll continue on. This is your Leica laser measurer. This is very helpful in inspections. Helps you to be able to move through measuring distances pretty quickly. You want to make sure you line up the back of your Leica with the end of the wall. And you can use any measuring tape, but I found Leica to be a very well-established company in the field of digital laser measuring instruments. So I'm basically going to follow each wall. I'm going to measure, and then I'm going to document on my drawing those measurements. And when I write down my measurements, I'm writing it at the angle that the wall is going. just before the wall, like this. All right, so I'm writing my measurement in the same orientation of the wall that I just measured. That way there's no confusion. So I would like you guys to, as I measure and draw out these walls, I want you to also take a piece of paper and follow the same process as if you were there on site. You want to be able to build muscle memory on how to sketch a property by, as we watch this video, by doing the very exact thing. My goal in doing this is to basically virtually take you on a ride along and sketch this room, sketch these rooms and this home with me. All right, looks about right. We're gonna continue on down the hallway. Sometimes this can be intimidating, but you just take one section of the home at a time and one wall at a time. There are times where your laser measure, it's not going to be the ideal situation to measure a room because you have to have a terminating point. In the case of this hallway, there's an angle here on this wall that I really don't have a terminating point, so I'm going to have to use my measuring tape to get that measurement. And we continue the process one wall at a time. There are times that during inspection we may be overwhelmed by the magnitude or the size of the home. However, if we just focus on one wall at a time, one angle at a time, and one measurement at a time, it all comes together at the end. And it may not be a pretty sight on the sketch that you're drawing at the moment, but once you get back to your computer, you draw the angles and then you populate the measurements, it all comes together. So here again, I do not have a terminating point, so I'm going to pull out the measuring tape. And you want to always do your measurements to the nearest inch. I would not worry or focus too much on 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch difference. So now as I stand here, I was drawing out the kitchen. Okay. Trying to keep in mind the position of the cabinets, so I'm draw those out as well. Windows, doors. And make sure all these things are taken into account when I'm drawing my walls. We want to be sure that we take into consideration the cabinets, their positioning, how it affects the ceiling. So as you can see here, I got my island there in the center, got my cabinets in the corner, taking everything into consideration. And I'm just going to continue my measurement. Now, when you have this big open floor plan, there's a particular way that you want to be able to measure this. But for now, in the beginning, you're just going to measure the walls as one big open space. We're going to partition off each section later on, and I'll explain the process when we get to that bridge. Can anyone tell me, in this video, at this moment, what was a big no-no that we ought not to do on any inspection? If you guess move any furniture, that is correct. You try as much as possible not to move anything on the lodge property while you're inspecting. Not even a chair, not even a booklet, whatever it is, because you don't want to be accused of causing damage to that lodge property. Kindly ask the insured if they would not mind moving those items for you so that you can conduct your inspection. So at this point, make note that we're basically drawing out the room, and then we come back and we take measurements of that room and add it to our sketch. So the way the laser tape works is that it sends, when you press the button, it sends out a laser, and the laser measuring tape measures the speed it takes for that laser to travel from the laser measuring device to the terminating wall and back to the laser measuring device. And then the device is designed to convert that speed into an actual measurement. So that's why you need the terminating wall. So here we are. This is what we're looking like in the entire sketch. Well, we're not done yet. We still got the hallway to deal with. Make note of the cabinets, their placements, and how they affect that room. So now we're going to do this section of the hallway. Because the rooms are not affected, theoretically, and hypothetically for this example, we're not drawing the rooms. We want to also make sure that we always orientate the place that we're standing with our drawing of the sketch so that we can make sure we're keeping the angles right of the walls. When you're in a situation where the house has a lot of angles, it's very easy to get disoriented. So as you move around the home, position yourself and your drawing sketchboard oriented in the proper direction so that you can keep your form. So as you move around, you're actually moving your clipboard around turning it so that you can be oriented in the right position, the right angle as the house is. Always remember, line up the back of your laser measuring tape with the end of the wall. That's your beginning point. There we go. Just a reminder, always line up your measuring tape, back of the wall, at the edge of the wall. Back of your laser measuring tape, back of the wall, and you want to make sure you point your arrow where the wall ends. Okay? Back of the measuring tape. Use clipboards or whatever to help you, or you can eyeball it. Sometimes you can't have the tape up against the walls, and you may have to hold it away from the wall a little bit, just to get around the door frames and cases. All right, now let's talk about these open areas here. Open floor plans. One thing I'd like to point out that I mentioned earlier when I was going around doing the scope, you want to sketch these rooms as 3 separate rooms. So this would be considered the living room. There would be a wall here. And I'm going to imagine my missing wall is going to be here, and my missing wall is going to be there. And it's going to separate it as the dining room. So what I'm basically going to do, I'm going to stand here and get this measurement where my missing wall is going to be. 9. I measure how wide it's going to be. 12 feet. Then you notice I draw the missing wall like hash marks. Okay? And it's 11.9 by 12 feet. So that's my dining room area. Now I'm going to hash mark out my living room area. And I'm going to measure how wide it is. But actually, I don't need to measure how wide it is, because once I subtract 11.9, once I create this room, it's going to already give me the depth of this room. Okay? And it's basically going to create all three rooms already for me. Because once I make this box here, I will continue this line here is section off the living room. And once I've done that, the dining room would already be sectioned off. Because I already have the measurements already 15 wide, and then whatever the remaining dimension would be for for the living room. And then the kitchen, I already have it as 10 feet wide by whatever that dimension is here that I've dimensioned already when I ran around and did wall for wall. So this typically would be how you would sketch a room. I found this style to be the fastest for me. And if I had to go into the other rooms, which I'm not going into because in my opinion there's no damage. I'm assuming there's no damage. But let's say there was damage. I would simply come on here and find out which one of these doors is that room. And I would just add it onto the sketch. I want to point out how I've depicted. See, I've depicted this as the front door, but I didn't erase the space there. Picture this as bedroom. I'm going to call it bedroom number 2, bedroom number 3. That's how I depict my doors. So I know that this is a wall, and that's the direction that the door opens in. So that tells me this will be the main entrance. I know this is the main entrance. And I also know every one of these doors depict a different room. Since there's no damage in there, I don't need to go in there and sketch those rooms. If let's say master bedroom's over here and there's damage, there's the door leading into the master bedroom from the corridor. So I would just add that room onto my sketch. So that in turn becomes the master bedroom. And I will separate the bath from the closet. I believe it was a pocket door in there. I could be wrong, but I'll go back in there and check. And this was a door. And the window right here. Okay? So I in turn, there's your bedroom. I just added it onto the sketch. You want to be able to make sure that you pick your windows and your doors properly. So my bypass door, I basically just put one line on both sides of the wall that depicted the bypass door. In the back there, here's my windows. I just put a square on the line to depict my windows. My cabinets, of course, the island. You want to make sure that you accurately depict these things because this makes a world of a difference on your sketch. We know that the bypass door is bigger than the standard door. That door in particular is about 5 feet wide. So I would make a note. I will make a note that that bypass door is 5 feet wide because once you put in the accurate size of that bypass door, the estimating software deducts that opening from your wall square footage. By default, Xactimate and Symbility, they will not deduct these openings unless they're greater than, I believe, 25 or 26 square feet. So when you can see that that window is more than 3 feet wide, you want to make note of the exact size of the window. If it's less than 3 by 5, I would not worry about writing down the dimensions of the window. Okay? Just some quick tips on sketch. I think that's it. Hope you guys found that helpful.